What's a host to do? Imagine your Airbnb guest overstays their welcome in your property, and now what? Do you have to deal with an eviction? How do you actually get a guest out of your property if you rent it to them on Airbnb and they just decide that they don't want to leave? So this is something that made headlines recently. Someone stayed in a Airbnb and is staying, to my knowledge, in an Airbnb for going on 540 days without paying a dollar to the property owner. Now, that's not to say they never paid a dollar. They did pay initially, but they've been staying rent-free for 540 days with the landlord just not being able to evict them for some reason, not being able to kick them out of there. And so naturally, a lot of people are wondering, why is that the case? A lot of people get out of long-term rental and into short-term rental because of the crazy tenancy laws and eviction laws throughout most of North America and other countries. It's just super challenging to be a real estate investor when you can put someone in there, have them stop paying rent, and meanwhile, you still have to pay your mortgage, all your expenses, and now you have to take 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24 months to get them out of there, depending on where your property is located and what the tenancy laws are like. Well, yeah, understandably, a lot of property owners and landlords are pretty frustrated by that, and so they switch over to short-term rental so that they can get away from that. Because the idea is that if someone's not renting your place long-term, shouldn't you be able to just call the police because they're trespassing and get them out of there? Well, the answer is most of the time, yeah. And so in this specific case, the property owner actually made a couple of really big mistakes. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how you can avoid those and make sure that you don't become a victim to a professional squatter or someone that's just trying to take advantage of you and stay in your property for free. So let's start with the basics. In any given area, there's a specific definition for what constitutes tenancy in a property. Now, most of the time, it means staying at that property for more than 28 or more than 29 or more than 30 or some places more than 31 days. Again, depending on the area, they define it a little bit differently. But for most places, as long as your person is staying at your property, booking your property for less than that period of time, you're good. They're not a tenant. Simple as that. If they overstay their welcome, then you just kick them out of there. If you don't want to kick them out of there yourself, you just call the police because they are in fact trespassing and you can just get them taken off the property. No eviction process, no long court battles, no waiting around. You just get them the heck out of that property, just like for most people thinking most like it should be. And so you basically can just get them out of there very quickly and easily, and that is ultimately the big benefit of short-term rental investing over long-term rental investing. In addition to the increase in cash flow you get, the better returns you get, the more control you get on your property, you also just don't need to deal with evictions. And as a side note to this, one of the things that I constantly hear people say when they convert over to short-term rental from long-term rental is how happy they are with the now minimal amount of maintenance and wear and tear happening on their property. And that's really counterintuitive to a lot of talking heads out there and what they say, people that don't have experience with short-term rentals and are just speaking from the grandstands. And really what they'll try to say is that people are going to throw parties and cause damage and there's going to be so much more maintenance at your property, when in reality, when you have a cleaning team going in there every couple of days and you've got guests that aren't staying for a really long time, putting holes in your walls, doing things like that, you really do actually have a lot less maintenance typically with a short-term rental than with a long-term rental property. But I digress. That's a side note that I just wanted to mention there as well. But then the question becomes, well, how did this person stay for 540 days, 2 years essentially, at this property without paying any rent? And that's because, guys, just want to take a quick break here to say that for those of you watching who want to build cash flow and long-term wealth by purchasing Airbnbs and short-term rental properties, there's a link in the description right down below for a free training that'll walk you through my exact strategy for investing successfully in Airbnbs. Now, if you're not ready to actually buy properties and you want to get started managing other people's properties on Airbnb the same way I got started and build a full-time income managing other people's properties, there's actually another free training linked in the description down below as well that'll be a really great fit for you. So whether you want to invest in short-term rental properties and actually build amazing cash flow and long-term wealth by acquiring the assets, buying the properties themselves, or you're looking to earn a full-time income managing other people's properties on Airbnb, we've got some awesome trainings that are linked in the description down below that'll definitely help you out. When you sign up for the trainings, we're also going to send you a few other tools and resources completely for free just to help you get started. Again, the links to sign up are in the description down below, and both trainings and all of the tools are completely free. So make sure to register for the trainings, links in the description down below. Well, how did this person stay for 540 days, 2 years essentially at this property without paying any rent? And that's because the person, the host, the owner of the property rented the place to them for 6 months. They just happened to use Airbnb as the platform to do that. So it's a quick disclaimer I want to give to you that just because you rent a property to someone through Airbnb or VRBO or another platform, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a long-term stay. Just because they didn't sign a lease document doesn't mean it's not a long-term stay and that they don't have the same rights as a tenant. Again, you'll want to look into the laws and regulations in your area specifically, but in a lot of areas, if you're extending that stay beyond the threshold to where it becomes a long-term stay, that person has all the same rights as a tenant, whether they booked it through Airbnb, VRBO, just paid you cash for it, whether they signed a lease, whether they didn't. A lot of the times, if they have a good lawyer, they can stay in the property and they can just avoid paying. And so what you want to be really mindful of is to basically just not have guests staying for that long if you're worried about having people stay in your property and need to go through an eviction process. As long as you keep those stays shorter than the threshold, then you should be good. Now, that's not to say you should never rent mid-term or longer term, but if you are doing that, you just want to be especially picky and especially selective. Really do your background, your due diligence checking on that individual that's going to be staying at your property to make sure that you decrease the risk of having to deal with an eviction down the road. Generally, because the reason they're looking for a fully furnished Airbnb property as opposed to renting something long-term is because they are going to be there for only a temporary period of time. Think about people on work assignments, traveling nurses, executives are coming into town for, to work in a specific office for a period of time. Usually they have a pretty finite end date for when they're going to be leaving. And so a lot of these people can actually be really great guests, and it can be great to get your place rented for a long period of time. But just know that when you're doing that, you are running the risk of having a bad tenant who you can't just kick out for trespassing if they decide to overstay their welcome. In those situations where you're renting for a longer period of time, in a lot of places you would have to go through an eviction process to get them out of there. So just be aware of that. Now, another thing that was a big mistake this specific person made, who made headlines, was that after those 6 months, the guests said that they weren't going to leave, and they negotiated a deal with the property owner that was going to allow them to stay for an additional number of days outside of Airbnb. And so what that did is it then meant that Airbnb couldn't step in and intervene because they had an outside deal outside of Airbnb, and that again just handicapped them even further. So another thing to show that, hey, if you're going to be renting on Airbnb or you're going to be renting short term, I generally do recommend actually doing it through the platform and not doing as many direct bookings unless you really know what you're doing. A lot of people think, well, hey, I can just take a bunch of bookings, not go through the platform like Airbnb or VRBO, and I'm going to be all the same. I'm going to be better off because I just get to make an extra number of percentage points by not having to pay those greedy suckers at Airbnb their fees. But the reality is there's actually quite a bit that you get as a host from using those platforms that are beneficial to you, and reasons that you may want to think twice before renting your place outside of Airbnb's platform. So number one, you get a whole bunch right now at the time of this recording, $3 million in liability protection in case the host or the guest damages your property. That's through Airbnb. You also get additional insurance coverage for the property for like loss of income, things like that. And then you also get their guest screening. They're going to do background checks on people. They're going to not necessarily do background checks, I shouldn't say, but they're going to verify the person's identity, and you get to do your own background check on the person because you can see past reviews. You can see other hosts and what they've said about those people that, maybe background check isn't the exact right word because I don't want to lead people the wrong direction and have them think that you do a full police background check on this person, their whole history. But you do get to look into a certain extent of their background to just see if they're a good guest or not. And so there are some pretty big benefits to renting through those platforms, which is why if you are going to go outside the platforms, you need to make sure that you still have that same level of protection from somewhere else. So that's why I recommend that if people are using a direct booking platform, that they do their own background checks, their own screening of their guests, because they're not going to be able to go through past reviews. There's nowhere to do that. We don't have a platform where we can just see all the other people this person is rented from and see what other people have had to say about that person. So you got to do your own guest screening. You also want to make sure you have good insurance coverage to cover that sort of thing. And so I think there's a lot that we can learn from the headlines going around from this specific case, but ultimately I don't think it's what people are cracking it up to be. A lot of people are fearful about needing to evict someone from Airbnb, and the reality is it's pretty easy to avoid needing to do that by just simply not renting long term to someone through any platform, Airbnb or otherwise. Then you just don't need to deal with any of the issues. And then like we talked about in this video, if you are gonna go beyond that or you're gonna be renting outside of Airbnb, there's also a number of things you can do to protect yourself so that ultimately as a short-term rental host, you get way more flexibility, way more control over your property, and in addition to getting a lot better returns. Those are my thoughts. As always, want to know yours, so let me know in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel here and you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. We post 2 new videos every single week here on the channel. So I'd love to keep you posted on all things Airbnb investing and property management. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button. And last but not least, make sure you hit the like button as well, just to be nice, right? It just really helps me out with growing this channel, and it shows me that you actually enjoy this kind of content and want to see more of it. So if you did enjoy the video, just hit the like button down below it. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.